apologies for the little crazy start in the process, but it is indeed a thrill and a pleasure to be a part of this afternoon's little conversation. My name is Dean Folkers. I serve as the Senior Director for Education Data and Technology at the Council of Chief State School Officers. The CCSSO is an organization that represents the state chiefs of education across the 58 states and territories, Bureau of Indian Education, and the Department of Defense Education Activity. And as a part of that, we serve a number of different entities and organizational needs of our state education agencies. I have the distinct pleasure of working with the Chief Information Officer Network and our Education Information Management Advisory Collaborative, which really are the folks on the ground that do a number of exciting pieces of the collection, curation, and use of data in a secure way that ensures the elements of privacy. And so when Dan Rollier from South Carolina said, hey, is it possible for us to bring together some states, some state CIOs and folks that are a part of the network and share a bit of their experiences related to finance data and collecting finance information from schools? Would you be willing? And we were absolutely thrilled to be able to help and support in this process. So today we have 3 different states that have 3 different approaches that we'll have an opportunity to have them share their insights and perspectives of what they've done. And so our plan is to let them share a little bit about what they do, and then we'll open it up for some questions and like deeper dive opportunities for understanding a bit more about what the different approaches are that they have deployed. So with us today we have Vanessa Wren. Dr. Wren is the Chief Information Officer at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. We have Lucas Munns, who is the Chief Information Officer at the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. And we have Debbie Daly, who actually is formerly from the Indiana Department of Education. Debbie was instrumental in some of the implementation of their data collection modernization work, including the connections of the finance data and the NFI implementation work. And so Debbie now works for a private consulting company, but was recently from the halls of the Indiana Department of Education. And so we're thrilled to have these folks here with us today, and look forward to hearing a little bit about their stories and their perspectives. And so let's jump to the next slide. And we get an opportunity to start with Indiana. So Debbie, we'll turn it over to you to share a little bit about the Indiana story via former Indiana Department of Education employee.
Thank you, Dean. I appreciate it. If we could go ahead and jump to the next slide, please. Again, my name is Debbie Daly.
Is that just us?
The opportunity to work on several large projects, lead those projects, including the data exchange, EdBite implementation, as well as many other large implementations. I am super excited to be here with you today. Thank you for this opportunity to share my passion about data and about interoperability. Since I'm no longer a state employee, I want to note that I am not speaking on behalf of Indiana, but more so sharing my experience from the time that I was with the Indiana Department of Education, as well as many of the publicly available steps that have been taken after my departure. I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead. Just a quick background on Resultant. Our education practice has over 400 years of combined experience. We do specialize in several areas, and again, just want to reiterate that as I come to you today, it is with that extensive background in education and education data systems. Let's go ahead and jump forward and jump right into the Indiana data story. So Today, I want to take you on an overall story or walk through how Indiana has progressed with the use of data, with the use of data standards across the state. First, we're going to touch on IDOE and their data standard adoption, move into how IDOE has expanded that for school finance data, talk a little bit about statewide K-12 data governance, and connect that back then to statewide school finance data impact. Let's go ahead and jump forward and talk about the IDOE story. Much like any other states, including South Carolina, IDOE undertook a statewide implementation of EdVi with a large modernization effort, really changing the landscape and the data dynamic in Indiana. This started back in May of 2018 with Indiana announcing the LINK initiative, in which we adopted the EdVi data standards with the goal of replacing file-based data transfers between the districts and the state. Our target then was to replace the legacy solution called the STN App Center, which again was the primary focus or primary system for allowing student and staff level records to be transferred to the state. By July of 2021, IDOE implemented the EdVi solution called Data Exchange, or DEX for short, which became the state's source of truth for that student and staff data, which allowed the state to move away from those file-based data transfers for those data sets and focusing then on that interoperability and real-time information between districts and the state. After July of 2021, we moved into a stabilization period, focused on continuous improvement, feedback from organizations, and ultimately then planning for the expanded use of the data standard in the state. In August of 2024, the IDOE Office of School Finance announced a new project to transition the school financial data collection from the file-based data solution called Form 9 over to the DEX solution for the back end, leveraging the EdVi finance domain to collect that information through, again, a real-time integrated API. The target go live for this component is summer of 2025. So let's dive a little deeper into that and bounce ahead one more slide. Again, knowing our focus today is really about that school finance data. I want to share a couple more details as well as the announcement on the bottom part of this slide that was made directly by the Department of Education. The implementation of the school finance component in the IDOE Data Exchange is expected to increase both accuracy and efficiency. The state and IDOE has identified the opportunity to have more accurate and timely data being sent by the LEAs, enhancing access to reporting and data validation, as well as reducing data redundancy coming from the districts. Again, with this new project, it's moving yet another component, being the school finance data, away from that file-based data transfer process that exists in the legacy solution to that interoperable, integrated solution. The state continues to work with the finance vendors at this time to be able to provide them enough detail and time to move forward with that transition of getting them both certified and connected to the new state solution to transfer that data. It should be noted that unlike the original DEX project, in which we replaced both the back-end data collection and the front-end UI/UX, for the school finance component, IDOE is actually just replacing the data transfer process and is keeping the UI/UX component or the user interface that people log into. This is allowing for a much smoother or anticipating a much smoother transition for districts since they already know their way around that user interface that they've been accustomed to. Again, with the introduction of these components, it'll move school finance, into the application programming interface world, where we can expect more real-time information flowing from LEAs up to the state. Now, let's pop forward a little bit, one more slide, and talk about how this is expanded across the state. Indiana is looking to address the intricacies of school finance data through governance and best practice. In addition to just school finance data, Indiana is looking at K-12 data as a whole and looking to incorporate those best practices to be able to operationalize integrations as well as realize efficiencies for the school districts. When we think about school finance data in particular in Indiana, one of the complexities that we've noted is that several state agencies actually require data to be reported from the LEAs to fulfill those unique agency requirements. The complexity in that school finance data includes that multiple ownership of the data, but also then multiple practices by those individual agencies, as well as individual processes for reporting to the unique agencies. Because of this complexity, Indiana has established a cross-agency K-12 data governance team to address best practices in collecting data from school districts to again help optimize and improve efficiencies and accuracy in data. This is true for school finance data as well as many other data components that are due to those multiple state agencies. Over to the right in the blue box, I did highlight a few of those key state agencies that are data owners for school finance data. They include State Board of Accounts, SBOA, who has audit responsibilities in the state. Today, they collect school finance data, including district engagement data. Of course, IDOE has extensive data reporting responsibilities or data collection responsibilities, and the school finance data in particular that is collected by the IDOE includes actual expenditures, indirect costs, and more. Highlighting the last difference, the Department of Local Government Finance, DLGF, also has responsibility for school finance data. Overall, they direct the implementation of the state property tax system, and they are responsible for collecting district information regarding intent, including budgeting information, projected revenue, and projected spend. So you can see that there are variation in those responsibilities across the multiple organizations. This puts extra burden on the LEAs themselves, having to report data to those multiple entities and inconsistent practices. I'm going to go ahead and move forward one slide. Indiana is focusing on addressing this through a K-12 data governance comprehensive plan. Again, this has been published now by that cross-agency team to help reduce the redundant data reporting by school districts. This is established by the Indiana General Assembly, and the K-12 data governance team was tasked in preparing this report to streamline that data collection process across those multiple state agencies. The K-12 Data Governance Comprehensive Plan details current state, including the many state organizations that are involved in K-12 data, not just finance data, but including finance data, as well as highlighting those rich data and the challenges that persist on those data elements. It also includes stakeholder feedback, again, directly from the districts in particular, of what that burden looks like in reporting to those multiple entities, and especially with the different practices of file-based data transfer, different charts of accounts, etc. It also defines a collection inventory of all of the different data elements and data collections that are being captured across the multiple state entities, and finally provides recommendations for efficiencies. This report created an actionable plan for collaboration and modernization of the data collection processes across those agencies. Let's go ahead and move forward one more. Jump into some very specific points. I do understand that, again, we wanted to get detailed in today's conversation and be able to dive into that statewide K-12 data governance plan. In Indiana, this identifies some key areas for improvement in school finance data in particular. One key area being the data governance, of promoting the efficient use of data across those multiple cross-agency data governance practices, through cross-agency data governance practices, including leveraging that data collection inventory and the data category or catalog to ensure that LEAs are not being burdened with duplicative reporting. also recommends data automation and integration, recommends the streamlined processing and increased data frequency through the expanded use of the EdFi data standard and implementing APIs for existing processes. Again, moving further away from that file-based data transfer legacy type solution. And lastly, it does recommend aligning the chart of accounts. It acknowledges that there is work already underway in the state of Indiana by those partner agencies to address some of that misalignment between agencies, noting specifically an exploratory path to an action plan to allow those standards to be aligned and again increase those efficiencies across the multiple organizations. In particular, and it does go into more details in this publicly available report, those three entities that I highlighted on one of the first slides with Department of Local Government Finance, IDOE, as well as State Board of Accounts are the target entities that are working on that collaborative path of how to align that chart of accounts. I think I have one more slide for you. I want to make sure I stay within my 10 minutes here, and it's some reference documentation for you. So again, wanted to be sure that we provided a couple leave behinds. The information that I've shared with you today also has publicly available documentation. It goes into more in-depth, more detail. One component of this is the IDOE's data exchange page that again provides an overview of all that's being done with the data exchange. Next, I provided those announcements directly from the school finance department at the IDOE that focuses on that transition from the legacy file-based solution to the EdFi solution for school finance data for IDOE. And lastly, I have included that link to the Indiana K-12 Data Governance Comprehensive Plan. This was published and released by the Indiana General Assembly agency reports. I think Office of Budget Management actually was the one that reported it or released it under their section. But again, it is available for public consumption as well. And I think that is it from me. Again, thank you guys so much for this opportunity to speak with you today. Happy to address any questions you have, or indeed if we want to get through all the presentations first, I'll leave that up to you.
Well, thanks, Debbie. I think if it's okay with everyone, unless there's a burning question, we might go ahead and just sort of give each state an opportunity to give you their views and perspectives, and then we'll open it up for any like deeper dive specific questions. Thank you very much, Debbie. All right, next we'll turn it over to Lucas Munz from the great state, as he describes, of Wisconsin.
Thank you, Dean. Again, I'm Lucas Munz. I'm the CIO for the state of Wisconsin. I've been in my role for about 2.5 years. With me today is Matt Beyer. He is a business analyst within our school finance services team. He lives this, breathes it, knows it inside and out every day. The systems that we have built were done to standards and stories that Matt created. So he gets a ton of credit for all of this. And Debbie did a great job laying kind of the foundation. In Wisconsin, we implemented WISE data and the EdFi API more than a decade ago. We have been expanding that beyond student information to do all kinds of additional collections, finance being one of them. In Wisconsin, our model for schools is that they have their own SIS. It's not state managed. There's a variety of vendors they can pick from, and we have to collect data from them, in this case on a nightly basis through the EdFi API. So WISE data at its core, and the WISE finance piece of that, is a view and a collection of information that districts themselves edit, modify, update on their own systems that gets transferred up to us. Keith, do you want to move us ahead one? So in order to make this functional, Wisconsin does have uniform financial codes. We have got a crosswalk of ledgers, and again, we count on the districts to update their information on their systems. We are collecting local accounts, budget accounts, and actual amounts. Take this forward. This is a picture of what our infrastructure looks like. So you can see here, the LEA has their SIFs. We transfer data down via the EdFi API into WISE Data on a nightly basis, over to an ODS, before eventually submitting to EdFax or publishing information in WISE-Dash or our financial reporting portals. Woofer. This is our uniform chart of accounts. I'll let you read a little bit there if you want to. I put a ton of extra slides in here that Matt pulled for me that are even hidden if you want to deep dive into more examples of these. Keep going ahead. So the way the codes are designed, it is to cut down on the amount of effort that we, DPI, have to put into things. It's simplified reporting. It is simplified setting up new grants, other areas, and has been a huge time savings for all of our financial teams. Skip ahead. We do 2 validations, a level 1 validation, kind of triggered when the sync happens, and the level 2 validation, Matt tells me 640 rules are run against this data to make sure that it's correct. There are mismatches, accounting errors, balance problems, tagging issues, all kinds of things like that. So here, just more information on what those L1 and L2 validations might be. Yep, keep going ahead. I want to get you all the information that you want, and I got Matt here to answer a ton of questions that you might have, and we can go as deep into this as you want. But yep, keep shooting ahead. All right, as we continue transferring into the WISE Data Finance service, we continue to build things out. We have plans to expand this. We have a uniform grant application system that we can leverage in conjunction with this to do additional process improvement and efficiencies. And we have, I want to get down to the last slide. I think there's only one more, maybe 2 more. Oh, okay, I left a lot of stuff in here. Whew. So you can see what our system looks like. This is what our new reporting model looks like. So we've got a legacy reporting area where we've got years and years and years, probably decades worth of reports out there. And then we've got a new reporting system, which looks just like this. I've got the link in the last page, so you can go check it out yourself. But we'll show you everything from Matt, is there anything that we should be touching on for this group?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. It's, yeah, we've recently similarly made a transition from our legacy reporting, which was sort of, file-based transfer or manual entry after the fact, to using the EdFi API to sort of continually have data, school finance data pushed to us at a much greater level of detail, much more local information from the school districts. And then the WISE Data Finance system is just the conduit for that school finance data that we then pull in to our reporting modules to either collect additional data and have the LEA's complete reporting as we go through sort of the fiscal year, as well as display a lot of that school finance data publicly, which is another project that we're currently working on expanding.
So I have these links out here. You can see extensive documentation of what the system looks like that the districts interact with. You could see all of our old reports, and then you could experience our new reporting system that we are working on every single day right now, trying to get more and more reports converted and out there. So thank you so much for your time. And I think if there's more questions, if there's time at the end, Matt and I will hang out here and try and address those for you.
Terrific. Thank you, Lucas, and thank you, Matt, for joining and helping fill in the gaps where needed. Well, let's now transition to our third state with North Carolina and Dr. Vanessa Wren.
Hey, thank you, Dean. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Vanessa Wren. I am the Chief Information Officer for the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. I've been in this role about 5 years. And as I have shared, our financial system is one of the last horizons that we are digging into to look at how we optimize. Nevertheless, we have been collecting financial data for over 40 years from our schools, and we have been putting in some iterative approaches of how we are modernizing those systems. So my goals today are to share with you just a little bit on what type of finance data do we collect from our schools. I even put in some slides on how we fund our schools, because that is where we create the business rules from, and then how we are collecting that data, what mechanisms are we using. So I wanted to just start off with just a little bit of history on the one thing that we have in place, if you wouldn't mind going one more slide ahead. And it is called our Uniform Education Reporting System. And unlike the name, it is not a system at all, but it was established in 1989, and it's a combination of state law and policies that require our school, require our agency to develop what is we call UERS users, and it is a way that we can collect our data. It gave us authority to collect data from our schools and the vendors that they use to be compliant with the data that we do collect in the formats that we collect them. We have had a statewide student information system in North Carolina since about the early 80s, different versions, but through the entire process, as we change vendors and do things differently, the Uniform Education Reporting System has been stable, and it requires compliance with all the reporting requirements that we've established for finance and student data. We even have the authority, and this sounds draconian today, and I don't know if we've ever done it, but we can withhold a salary if a school district is not compliant. But that's how important this data is for us. And we provide funding to our schools for a statewide SIST, a statewide financial reporting system, a unique identifier system, which is one of the backbone pieces, the longitudinal data warehouse, operational data store, and then, of course, a licensure system. And that's important because it gives us the backbone, if you will, for all the framework we do around financial reporting. And the next slide here is how we fund our schools. I'm not going to spend any time on that. Like all states, we fund our schools, and that's there for you to look at. But we do have a very extensive allotment policy. And those allotments most of the time are based on membership and different economic tiers. And I have linked our allotment policy manual there for you to review if you would like to. On the next slide, I also put that we have a standard statewide salary schedule, and that is updated yearly. And it ranges are set for administrators and classified personnel, and maximum salaries are also set with district supplements. And of course, that is important as we're putting together the requirements for our reporting system. And so we change it annually as we get changes in that and as our allotments change. And then on the next slide, you'll find that we have position allotments. So in addition to allotting dollars for programs and school districts, we also allot positions. And for every 100 students, we would give one principal for teaching positions. And but there are also allotments for other important positions that are needed. But that leads us to then the Uniform Chart of Accounts. And the Uniform Chart of Accounts is what all of our public school units, and that includes LEAs and charter schools, they have to report on that with the standardized fund code, program code, and object code. A little bit of history, because it does shape where we are today. We used to issue paychecks and keep copies of all of the expenditures to our LEAs. Before LEAs, and LEA is a local education agency, in case you have a different terminology. But they before they had the capability to do that, we would do that for them. And this involved a very deep process of mirroring full copies of each of our public school units, systems, full ledgers, and receiving that data. We have changed that now, where most of our data from the PSU ledgers that are used for reporting and CAS managers just come in up to us in monthly reports. So that gets me to our current state. And let me caveat our current state. Our current state is effective in that it gives us the data we need, but we are looking at how we can streamline this system, because it is based on a lot of file transfers. And so we are looking to streamline this. We have just about a year ago contracted with a consulting firm that has helped us document every one of our finance business processes. And there's about 1,500 of those, where we're looking at how we can optimize with the technology that's available now. But our current state is that our schools can use any ERP system of their choosing. And there's about 4 primary ERP systems across the state of North Carolina. But they must report to our UERS data according to those specifications. And most of the PSUs are using things like Link, Sylogist, Tyler Munis, Oracle Cloud. Doesn't matter. And I put a link here because we share with the vendors the 4 reports we have to have for them for UERS and what format they have to be in. And that allows us to accept that data. On the next slide, I also wanted to see, I think here, what some of the data exchanges that we have available. It's very bidirectional. Again, primarily using CSV file formats and downloads between what we've built as Oracle Apex applications. We have data that goes to PSUs around the allotments, the chart of accounts, which is uniform, it's 15 digits. Every number in that chart of account has a purpose. And as Lucas in Wisconsin was sharing, it does streamline our work. We can also see by our object code how money is spent on certain things, and then how much money is not spent on certain things as well. We also receive data back from our PSUs around the unique identifier, their UERS reports I'm going to go into because that's really where we get a lot of information. And we do have a standardized grant reporting system that's called CCIP. On the next slide, I did a little bit here about our allotment system and what it looks like. And it does provide a public website. It's secure. There's 2 of them. There's a public-facing website and then a secure website with deeper details. That we have about 30 years of our finance data on our public-facing website that shows how schools how they have been allocated money, what PRCs they've been allocated in, and how those dollars were spent. They can do a quick comparison with other LEAs to see how they stack up and how they're spending their dollars. And then we have a system called LISAL. And our LISAL system is a combination of licensure and salary. That's a separate system, but it uses the pay stubs from our LEAs combined with licensure data to ensure that our teachers are paid according to the state salary schedule. And that gives us validation and some auditing to ensure that every teacher and whatever educational position you're in a school, that you are being paid correctly. And HR and finance staff can also use that system to point to hire, to validate their salaries, review their salaries, and ensure compliance, licensure compliance, and licensed salary pay compliance. And the next is I mentioned our grant system. So that's just what we're talking about here. We have a statewide grant system that manages our federal and state grants and then other one-off grants as well. And we receive data from that system about those allotments and how those dollars are being spent. And on the next slide, These are the 4 files that really populate the data for our agency. We have a monthly financial record, and that's a summary file of every one of our public school units' budgets. And that budget code contains the budgeted amounts, the month to date, the year to date expenditures. And then we have a general expense file. And you can click on the links that I've put in the slide deck and you can see what these look like. And this contains a record of each voucher that's non-payroll that gets written to that PSU for each month. And then next is our payroll detail summary file. These are 2 different ones, but this really gets into very detailed payroll reporting that comes up to us. It includes the budget code, the teacher experience levels as they enter them into the PSU, any vacation leave, and it includes taxes and benefits. And primarily, we use this to calculate at our level our average teacher salaries. That's one of the things that we report on constantly, the average teacher salary pay from that system. So what we did, and this is an iterative report because we are looking to how we can improve what we're doing. We get the right information we need. We report well, but we would like to bring some of these systems together and not planning on changing the chart of accounts, but certainly would like to streamline that. As part of an iterative approach, we built a data lake on Snowflake, and we're bringing in those monthly 4 files from our schools each month, and we are able to validate that. We did that to replace our mainframe. My primary goal for doing that is everyone that I had on staff working on mainframe could retire. And they were working in a legacy language, and it was a real risk to us to keep running that. So this is an iterative approach to give us some security that we have some business continuity in the interim. And next, I wanted to say that I also wanted to show you, and I also put this link here, we created what's called our data and analysis reporting tool. It's a front-end interface. It allows for visualizations for our public schools and what the reporting looks like. It handles the authentication, the access request, so they can see their own data. So we act as the bank for our schools, right? In our state, we cannot give them the entire state allotment at one time. They go in and they request that as a month. That is governed by state law. And so we have an application where they go in and they request their cash. On the next slide, and you'll see that we have an ultimate fiscal control. And this is how our CFO, many years ago, probably like 25 years ago, put in a zero-out system that makes sure that total expenditures and all these calculated matches back. And so that's an accounting system that we have implemented and made sure the technology tools are in place to support that. What it does, it enforces compliance with the chart of accounts. And as the funding, if any invalid codes are used, it'll pull those things back out through a zero-out accounting process. And then we have our principal's monthly report and student accounting, and I've linked that here for you as well, so you can see what that data is. Again, we collect that data through our data lake, and we visualize that data through the link. And also we connect to our what we call UDI, and that's our education demographic system, and that's that authoritarian source tool of all of the pieces that we keep in place for our schools to make sure that they have a school directory that extracts to these systems with school numbers and also provides us a dashboard of that data. And then I have a image, if you will, of what our uniform education reporting system looks like. What are the databases? How do they feed? And I went one level deeper on the next slide. So if you're interested on how we are looking at this. Again, this works for us, has worked well, but we are looking to see how we can streamline some of this and move away from some CSV file movement to something a bit more streamlined, but not breaking what we're doing in the process, because we're getting the information we need, but we sure would like to look at how we can streamline that, and that's what we're in the process of doing now. So thank you for allowing North Carolina to share, and I will be very happy to answer any questions.
Vanessa, I have a quick question. Are your PSUs, are they synonymous with the LEAs, or are they at a
PSU is our legislative terminology that stands for Public School Unit, and it encompasses an LEA and a charter school. We treat our charter schools as a public school, and that is the terminology that we use when we are talking about all of those entities.
So they are pretty synonymous, LEAs, PSUs, got it. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Look good.
Thank you, guys. That was extremely informative. I'm really excited listening to all of the things that you said. I actually personally had a question. I thought I might kick it off if I could ask Lucas. You had mentioned L1 and L2 validations, and I was just curious how you guys implement those. Are those sort of real time when the districts upload it, they immediately see the validations are failing and can correct it there, or is it the type of thing that takes place on the end of the State Department where you validate it and then reach back out to the districts? And then what type of actions do you take out of them? Some of them may be just corrections, but does that help trigger warnings that districts might be in more trouble?
Matt, you want to go ahead?
Yep. Great question. So the level 1 or the L1 and L2 validations, okay, so they're practically real time. It is as they push data to us. The level 1 and level 2 validations are a standard from EdFi. And so when they're pushing either student data to us or finance data, the validations are checking the data as it is being pushed via the API to us. And the functional difference between the two levels is if the data that they are pushing is not in a format that the system can even accept, it's just not going to make it into the system, and that's a level 1 validation. There's reporting in our applications that lets them know, like, here's the data push that just happened via the API. These are accounts or errors that may have, deletions or posts of that data that may have failed out, which is important because we're just not getting any of that data in. Usually it's them for finance pushing accounts that are not on the chart of accounts that we've detailed for the state. So they're not valid enough accounts for us to even know where to put them for school finance data. The level 2 validations are when the local accounts that are mapped up to our state required reporting level chart of accounts make it into the system. And then we do sort of 2 types of validations. One are data formatting validations that's just checking the structure of the data that is making it in, really just ensuring it's in a good enough format that it made it in the system, but there may be some discrepancies as far as how they have certain data elements within our chart of accounts that aren't matched up or not going to roll up to the appropriate place, or other minor issues with the data will trigger those data format validations. The rest of the validations that we run are fiscal in nature from an accounting standpoint. They're looking at specific accounts and areas. They're checking for certain things, looking for and Lucas, we went through some of these, checking to see if certain accounts have negative amounts on them that shouldn't. Our accounting system consists of multiple different accounting silos or funds that are in use. We check to make sure that if they're moving funds between, say, our general education fund or our special education fund, that, that transfer is being done correctly, things match out. We do a lot of checks to make sure that all of the accounting information for each of those self-balancing funds we're doing trial balance checks. Starting fund balance plus revenue minus expenditures equals ending fund balance, checking to make sure that debits and credits on balance sheets match out, and doing other on-record validations to ensure that, for, say, our state equalization aid, that, we know how much they are receiving as a school district. We're checking to make sure what they have on their ledger matches that amount. So when they push the data, it's not entirely real time. We have a sort of nightly job within the system that will run a validation job that looks at all of the data that is in the system and will trigger those validation rules within the application, where they're able to go in and review them. They can see what areas of concern there may be. And then depending on where we are throughout the year, they could either address it right away or by certain reporting deadlines that happen throughout the year. And the way that they correct those, and this is where we have where that we've had sort of a paradigm shift from the previous reporting system when we had sort of a after the fact manual entry file transfer system where they would complete certain fiscal reports throughout the year. We would do similar checks in that system, and if there were errors that were generated based upon that financial data, they would fix it on the report, and then they'd be able to submit that, like our main annual report, for instance, with the expectation that they would then go back and make those same changes they made on the report on their ledger. And that's where things sort of historically maybe didn't work out so well. Now, in order to actually address these validations, they have to make the changes and corrections on their ledger at the district level or LEA level, and then they re-push their data and clear out those validations. And let me know if I missed any part of the question.
And I would offer that Indiana follows the same practice with the tier 1, tier 2 validations. And again, leveraging EdFi, pushing that back to the source system and requiring that update in the source system rather than in an external file. Yep.
Very good. Thank you. Another question that a couple of us have talked about. You may do it, it may be different where you are instead of South Carolina, but things don't always go just the way we wanted them to first time around. And so we're kind of learning as we go. But for all of you, would love to kind of hear where do you wish you would have done things differently? What are some challenges that took some time to overcome? You know, what have you learned that we can learn from you without having to go through all the hardship? Would love to get any feedback you have on that.
I don't mind answering that question. And I'm going to answer it from a CIO's lens, not a CPA or CFO's lens. But I think whenever you're looking at a project like this, it is so important to understand your end result fully before you start building. And by that, I mean requirements. Get your business processes documented fully so you can translate those into the proper requirements and then test those requirements as much as you can against those business processes. That is one of the hardest things because there is so many things that are done in finance that have built over many years of time. And oftentimes people don't know why it was done that way, but they do that way. And it's very true in any type of software build stack to get from ideation to operation. But doing a very thorough process of understanding all your business processes, how those interact with your school's business processes, and then fitting that into the technology tool, and then let the technology tool transform those business processes where appropriate. So those are my words of wisdom.
I would add from a CIO lens, sustainability and thinking about how you're going to continue to maintain this system going forward. Work that out up front. We did the bulk of ours with our SLDS grant from the feds, and figuring out how we were going to continue to grow and expand and improve has been as much about how we're going to pay for those changes as it is about what those changes are actually going to be.
Yeah, and I would agree with all of that. And I would definitely say if it's a period where you're actually transitioning a lot of your systems or processes from what we've been doing over the last few years, I would definitely try to visualize what the endpoint you really want to achieve is, or where you really want to end up. And there are some asks that I think that we did not, if you are able to really set the standards of what you need as far as the level of detail of data that you're going to get from, say, all the LEAs. I think we are a local control state for our school districts. So it's sort of it's a somewhat sensitive issue, but really because we are collecting a much higher level of detail from the local accounts from the LEAs, and with the push, say, at the federal level of where they really want school level school finance data, is really making the ask where we're starting, as you're doing the transition to ask for that higher level of detail and make some specific asks about how they're going to get that data to you now, as opposed to trying to implement it later. I hope that made sense.
Yeah.
And I think I would weigh in last that so one thing we like to advise on large projects is to think about the critical to quality. What absolutely must happen and what might you have a little bit of leeway on. So in other words, is the date the most important thing on a particular data collection? Is there a drop dead date by which data has to be finalized? Are there opportunities for an audit process or a correction process that can occur? Really identifying those critical to quality components up front and understanding, I think maybe Vanessa had shared, that full scope of what needs to happen to completely transition is an important part of really any of the large scale projects, but especially when you're swapping out data systems.
So how did y'all work with the LEAs, PSUs, whatever you call them in your state? Because obviously you're impacting everybody across the state, right? So what do we have? 85 school districts? 74 now? Plus the charter schools. But you're talking about impacting all of them, right? And could be significantly, depending on what you choose to do. So how did you work with them? How did you communicate with them? What did that process look like?
North Carolina here. You cannot under communicate, as we all know. We put together an advisory board that is made up of our CFOs and HR directors across the state. And we meet with all CFOs and all HR directors because we're looking at how we integrate our ERP systems to get even better data. We meet with them once a month and get their feedback and understand their pain points. And, we are funding this through, at the time, it was called modernization money, where we modernize our systems to get better information. And but meeting with them once a month, and we convene with them twice a year in person, continuous feedback from them to us.
And I think in Wisconsin, we did a lot of outreach, both from this when we started implementing SIS and pushing data via the API, and then moved on to the school finance. It does help that, these are systems that the school districts have to have in place. We have a relatively small number of vendors that are providing these services at the districts. And so a lot of the onboarding is working with the vendors, and the vendors becoming certified and able to actually do the certain requirements that we need, to push data via the API, to, download and implement our chart of accounts into their systems for the school districts in order to push the data. So that's just a good touch point. And we have several different organizations that we work with. We have an organization of school business officials that run, we run conferences as sort of an overall arc of training for new staff at the district level, new administrators, new school business managers. And then, so we cover a lot of that information there. I personally do a podcast every other Tuesday morning for about 45 minutes, just talking about what's currently going on with the transition to new systems and the development of new reporting. And then you'll never provide enough documentation.
Yeah, I don't know what other states look like, but Wisconsin has around 420 LEAs.
421 school districts, 29 independent charter schools that are also LEAs.
Yep. So we also used subsets of those for piloting and things like that, trying to make sure that we had districts small, medium, and large across the range of vendors that they had the option of choosing.
And we also have regional educational agencies that are called CESAs in Wisconsin. There are 12 of them by region that also provide support to school districts within their region for both services and fiscal services.
For Indiana, for the implementation of data exchange, which again was the SIS implementation and transition of data standards, Much like has been described on here, Indiana is a local control state. So there were multiple SIS vendors, just over 20 when we initially started. Some vendors did drop out. However, there are right at 300 traditional school corporations, about 100 charters. Plus, we also onboarded all of the accredited non-public schools to report their data as well. So about 800 organizations overall connecting to that data exchange implementation. Much of the practices that everybody else described, convening a council or committee, advisory committee to help inform how the state was going to do that implementation, as well as doing what we called the roadshow, just hitting all of the different conferences across the state. We participated in the SIS vendor conferences as well to be able to touch their clients and hear that message directly. We did work very closely with the SIS vendors, having SIS vendor office hours, as well as individual touch points with the SIS vendors. And the state also opened up office hours for the LEAs, where twice a week they were able to get on with our lead of data reporting and ask their questions and have that real-time interaction to be able to keep those communication channels open. At the end of that data exchange implementation, a survey did go out and receive feedback from the districts on what worked well, what they'd like to see improved, how to better communicate. One of the interesting feedbacks at that time was that the state IDOE had too many sources of communication, and there was an ask to consolidate that to one platform to help districts find information, which I thought was pretty interesting for that iteration too. And so the state is definitely, my understanding, again, is they've taken all those lessons learned and are refining that process for this iteration of releasing the financial data components and domains, excuse me, in Ed5, but still building on those best practices of frequent and consistent communication.
Hello. Different set of questions. Can you tell us how your data or your system is either used by policymakers to help in decisions or budgeting, or how the system helped improve the reporting of data or the use of data?
I'll go first. Sorry. So our public reporting side is used so heavily by our fiscal research division at our General Assembly. They know that website probably better than we do. And they know exactly where to find the things. So it has been incredibly important as a communication tool with our North Carolina General Assembly members and our fiscal research members, as well as our schools CFOs. And so it has helped to make sure that they see their data, they know where to find the data. They can, even though we have the same levels of validation that we talked about on this call, that again is another level of validation. If something has gone awry, they will spot it as soon as that is posted. And so as a communication tool to all of our stakeholders who need this type of information, it has been a tremendous time saver and transparency as well.
I think I would echo what Vanessa said almost to a T. I will say some of our reports are actually created in statute. The legislators have defined what it is that they want to see because they're looking for specific things, that it wasn't left up to us to make guesswork of what they might find valuable. They took the step of doing that themselves.
And I'll share the story of attendance data in Indiana. As you probably noticed by the timeline, Indiana implemented the data exchange solution mid-COVID. And so with that, there was a lot of attention and of course, concern around student attendance. Now that concern certainly hasn't dropped off by any means, but again, during COVID, there was especially concern and interest by the governor's office as well as by health department and others. And so with the ability or with the data flowing in so frequently near real time into the data exchange solution, IDOE was able to open up a real-time attendance dashboard directly to the governor's office to be able to allow them to monitor those real-time trends and data and be able to even recognize, again, during COVID, some of those potential hotspots in the state where there might have been an outbreak or attendance dropping significantly in an area. As mentioned, attendance continues to definitely be a concern in the state as well as across the country. The use of that data and those dashboards has been expanded now, where those have been brought into permanent dashboards, permanent reports that I believe now are accessible not only by the public, again with some attendance information, but as well directly by districts accessing that real-time attendance information, as well as some policymakers, state officials. And in addition, that attendance dashboard was actually highlighted at the White House earlier this year. And so the fundamental, again, underlying component of that is that access to that real-time attendance information flowing in from the district. Whereas previously, in the old file-based data transfer solution, that was an end-of-the-year data element that was provided to, by the districts to the state, and now IDOE is receiving that data near real-time. I throw in that near real-time, it has been left up to districts if they want to sync that overnight or every couple of days, again, just recognizing that they want to, there's considerations for overburdening a system during the day. And again, we are those local control states, so not every system is exactly the same. But it is definitely a very heavily used component. And again, I think one of the bigger successes of transitioning to the EdFi data standard is that ability to get that data, especially attendance, so quickly and accurately. I will share also that after the success of gathering that attendance information, policymakers did ask that IDOE incorporate that in the student state tuition calculation, basically ensuring that students were in attendance in order to receive the state tuition.
Thank you. Dean, by the way, we love your background.
It's a part of my economic development strategy for Nebraska, which is where I'm from.
Love it. Love it. Kind of a question for Lucas, but I'm curious for the rest of you as well. So you mentioned that the legislature has specifically said this is what we want. Is that all you provide, or are you kind of making all this information available to the legislature and they can look at what they want? Because it sounds like that's what some of the rest of you are doing. So I'm curious, Lucas, what that looks like for Wisconsin.
Matt can add a little bit to this as well. The bulk of our reports have not been legislatively mandated in that way. We create a lot of things based on feedback from LEA staff, essentially the business managers for those schools want a lot of data. We want a lot of data. And the legislature has taken the additional step of defining what kind of data that they want.
But are you only providing the legislature with what they want, or is more information available to them as well?
We have, our dashboards are publicly available for all.
Okay.
So we don't restrict access for them.
Okay.
I think there's, go ahead, Matt. I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. So, no, we have historically, either through our legacy system or just from actually populating things like workbooks and making them available on our state agency website, have provided longitudinal data, school finance data on a yearly basis in a number of areas, from even the raw data based upon the sort of annual report cycle they have to complete and the audited financials that have to be completed. So we've always made that available. We're actually currently, my team is working with Lucas's team on making a public dashboard available, because as we transition to our new system using Wise Data Finance and WizFip, it's on our main portal that the LEAs use to complete reporting is on a secure platform that requires a login, and we sort of lost some of that public view we had in the legacy system, which is why we're building this public portal right now and building more reports in there. But so we do provide a lot of, we were already providing all of this school finance data already, just either the raw data or some of the specific cost calculation models that we use for comparison, either for our aid runs or just comparing overall revenues or expenditures from district to district or statewide. It's always been there. We do have a recent specific ask from the legislature where they want it in a slicker package, and they do want us to highlight specific areas of just sort of political interest that have developed.
I hope that answers your question.
It does. Yes, thank you.
Not sure which microphone, but I'll pull down both. My name is Tanya Crosby. I'm a CFO in a local school district in South Carolina, and I have a two-part question, then I have a follow-up after that. I don't claim to understand all your acronyms, because I have my own set. So I don't know if I'm the only one that there were a few that I was a little lost on, but mine are pretty basic questions. What was the total length of time of implementation of all of your school districts to move to the new ERP system, say from the time you announced the implementation to the last district fully being able to comply with that?
It wasn't that long of a timeline. I would say probably a couple of years. We were working with the vendors in the field that our school districts were using as their finance or ERP vendors. Mainly our main vendor is Skyward, which has a couple of products. They're in like 30 states, but they're headquartered here. So roughly about 85% of our school districts are all using that system. And so they're pretty comprehensive and they were pretty on the ball. So that helped with the process. We do have a few other vendors within the state. We had one school district who developed their own system, Power School, Tyler Tech Munis is one. Link is a small number of our districts, which I know they bought up a couple of different products. I know they're headquartered in South Carolina. But yeah, just from the vendor side, that helped. So we basically said that this is what is coming. And then we continued to sort of, as we transitioned reporting, did dual reporting in our legacy systems while also getting them set up first with the emphasis on them pushing the data. And then while we worked through some of the issues, as it was a lot of work with the districts, by starting with a few key areas where there was a lot of work that had to be done on the sort of ledger or chart of account level to get everybody using the same chart of accounts and correcting their accounts at the local level to make sure they were compliant in that area, because that was something that was, when it was manual entry for a lot of that data, it's easy to fudge it really and just make it work. But yeah, so we did, we started with the requirements around under IDEA for maintenance of effort and this, tying it to our grant system to help ensure compliance. But overall, since the functionality and actually transmitting the data to us was something that was largely created and handled by the vendor side of things, it was working through that piece, but otherwise, overall, the transition period wasn't terribly long. And then as we sort of created the new reports to replace the legacy reports in the new system based off of that data, we basically said, okay, this is the first year we're going to collect the report here. And then for a lot of the reports, like I said, we would do dual reporting.
Since Indiana has not fully made the transition yet, and is just in this transition period, I don't have a definitive answer for you on what that will look like, but we'll call out that they did announce to vendors in schools in August of 2024. And again, by what's been communicated, the expectation is that districts will be using the new system this summer for the July 2025 submission cycle or collection cycle. It is my understanding that, as mentioned earlier on critical to quality, that IDOE has given some consideration on how districts can move forward and get data in if they do hit any hiccups with that timeline. But I do expect that relative to the SIS conversion, this is a smaller project and a smaller footprint and level of effort for those vendors, just given the number of API or application programming interface endpoints or connections they have to make to get that data over. So for student information systems, for example, it was about 35 that the vendors had to address. And for the financial component, financial domain, it's only 3. And so again, level of effort wise, it is a smaller effort and likely then a smaller transition. Likewise, again, in Indiana, because they're not replacing the entire system, they're only replacing the way that data comes in. There should be less transition time to be able to be fully operational.
And the second part to my question was, who funded the initiative to transition to the new ERP system for the school districts? Was it locally funded, was it state funded, or a combination of both?
Locally funded. As far as the district side.
The back-end state side was SLDS, federal grant funded.
The state side is state funded through modernization funds. Our public school units are a combination. We funded part of the implementation through state funds and local funds through other parts.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
All right, well, I think we're good on our questions on our side. I just can't thank you all enough for joining us today. This was such a huge help for helping us get our heads wrapped around things. So thank you so much, especially after coming off a conference. So I know that's a lot, but if we have any questions, are you okay that we think about later? Are you okay if we reach out to you guys?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And if you want to channel those through us, we'll also make sure that you have the PowerPoint slides so that everyone can grab those and the links off of them. In fact, Keith may have already sent it to you all. And so, but if there's other things that pop up, absolutely channel them our way. We're more than happy to help in any way that we can.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arun.
Practices Act. So we've had some new declarations go out recently over the past week. We've got 3 new fiscal declarations. We've got 3 that are continuing their declaration that they were already on, and we've had 1 that's been removed. So I wanted to open the conversation to kind of discuss how setting standards and reporting and a standardized system could help a struggling district before it gets to the point that it's being put on a fiscal declaration. So findings and repeat findings are a common item that a district might find themselves on a fiscal declaration. So we've discussed best practices. If we develop a best practices standard and share that and it's utilized throughout the state, throughout the districts, would that be one of the best efforts we could do to mitigate audit findings? If we have a standardized reporting system, what could we potentially identify at the state or upper level to flag a variance or identify a corrective action that needs to take place prior to somebody closing their books out. Would user groups, or like they were talking about advisory boards with a standardized accounting reporting system, if we had a group that was available to be a resource for districts that had new hires, that had staff that left, would this be something that would be beneficial to the districts as a whole? And then from a department perspective, our goal would be, my goal is for the Fiscal Practices Act to be used in a more productive way to provide technical assistance for these districts on the front end before problems escalate. So how can we best assist the districts? So that's going to be an ongoing conversation, I think, to help us provide the best technical assistance that we can provide to the districts. And then the other problem we're really seeing, or the common reason we're seeing declarations, is late audit submissions. And as you all know, there are fewer and fewer auditing firms that are available to engage with the districts. So how would a standardized system, or how could a standardized system potentially assist auditors from an auditing perspective? So if anyone has any thoughts, I would welcome them.
I've got, go ahead.
If I could comment on a couple of those things that you mentioned. Number one, and I don't know that anybody has sat down and put the thought to it, how many of those that have been put on watch have had CFOs or superintendents in their first 3 years? I got a feeling that's a really high indicator of what's going on there. I don't know that, and I'm going to speak mainly from the superintendent side, because I found myself making a change into a district that had some concerns. If I had not been able to bring my CFO with me, it would have been a train wreck. And so I don't know how much we do as a state. You know, I know that you know, SCASBO does a great job with their training and help, but I don't think there's a systematic plan to make sure that new CFOs and new superintendents really understand it. And I'm going to tell you, I think it's getting to be more and more superintendents have less and less grasp on the financial side of the picture. So I would say that. I don't know the audit answer for you, but I can tell you that as much as we plan, and Larry's firm is our folks, and I think that we are aggressive in how we approach audit. We're tight every year, even aggressively approaching it, and our folks are well, they plan well, I think they implement well for y'all, Larry. You know, I don't think there's a lag. I don't think we look for stuff, waste time. It's a hard turnaround, especially when you consider what all has to be closed out after July 1st. You know, June 30th is not the end. No. June 30th is the end of the beginning.
Exactly.
And I don't know that folks really understand that. And the amount of extra things that have been added to the audit have only compounded that problem. Yeah. So that's just, I think I hit 4 of your stems there.
Yes,
exactly.
and I know
I wasn't writing, so.
And I know we all know it's not only on audit side, but it's harder and harder to find good financial folks anymore. It's government accounting is a tough crowd to get.
And I'll make the comment, and my CFOs in the room will like hearing this. The second highest paid person in the school district ought to be the CFO. And I don't care what anybody else says, and the instructional side is very, very important. But the CFO is the second most important person in the room. And I've approached that now for a number of years in my career.
So Dr. Goodwin, you know Dr. Floyd, who was at Berkeley for a long time. I forget who was there. He used to say, we used to do an annual training with him, and he would tell all of his staff when he would meet with them, the biggest problems you got to worry about are M&Ms. And they're all looking around the room going, what in the world? Money and morals. Mm-hmm. If You get those right, you're okay generally.
I have a more direct approach the way I say it.
Kendra, I'd like to get a little bit more background. All due respect, I think audits really are too late. You've already got the body on the table trying to figure out what happened. Based on either Larry's experience or Harrison's experience or the department, I mean, I don't think this happens in 1 year. I think it takes a couple of years. And I didn't know, are there key indicators that should be examined? Is it their fund balance is going down? Is it, I agree with you, the CFO is probably the most important person there to watch that. Is it report? I mean, are you spending more? I mean, what are the key indicators? I mean, is it total lack of management, so to speak? Or is it disasters or something? I mean, what is it? Are there key indicators that should be examined before the audits come out? I'm just looking for kind of what's led to this.
And Frank, I think you're hitting on it. Is that I'll go back to what I say about the training of superintendents in the financial realm as well as CFOs. I think that too many people get into the job that don't know those roadblocks to look out for. They get to mid-year and they've hired 25 contracted employees, and they don't realize what the difference is on how much it costs to have contracted SLPs as opposed to what it costs to have an SLP that works for you. And all of a sudden it balloons out of control, and they, it's like, oh my gosh, what happened?
Having just finished up a couple of contracts with some districts, a couple of things I would like to point out, and I'm glad you brought this up. Superintendents and CFOs shouldn't have to be trained to work together, but there are some that don't work as closely together as they should. They should be hand in hand, arm in arm all the time. So decisions that are made by superintendents or boards are not thrown at the face of the CFO without them knowing it. That's recently happened in one of our districts. The second one is a district who, unfortunately, has been put on fiscal emergency from some things that happened that were out of their control. Another CFO, two other superintendents, and they're now struggling to get their arms around things that need to be fixed. They are quite fixable. I know this district very well. Kendra and I talked before this meeting. So some of the things she's touched on are very important. How can we as a group, how can the department develop best practices that can be given to a district that say, if you follow these, you will be successful? I think that is one of our primary focus of this committee. How can we develop those best practices that we can put in front of them and say, if you do this, you will be successful? An audit checklist is extremely important. Here's what you've got to do before the auditor walks in the door. SCASBO is getting ready to, or is entertaining a pretty strong mentor program that we would have trained CFOs to go into other districts and actually be boots on the ground assisting. I think the superintendents need to be involved in that as well. They got to have buy-in into it. And if we don't train our own, who is going to? We've got to. It's very important. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And the department understands what they've got to do, but it's having the staff and people to be able to go do it. That's the important part, is to be able to say, okay, this district needs some, the IRS, we're here to help you, we're here to help you. Yes, so just developing those practices, getting some people that can go sit in a district and say, what can we help you do? Creating those checklists and those policies that can work uniformly across any district. I mean, a good checklist is, good anywhere. This reporting list that we're coming up with is going to be essential to our districts when we finalize that and put that in front of a district. So those are just some things that I've seen recently that cause me concern, but I think if we develop these best practices, it will help these struggling districts.
If I may, I think from the issues that I see in neighboring school districts that surrounding us, their struggle is the staffing. And I don't think any software system will resolve that. What I do see in the charter schools, though, is many of them outsource their accounting services to small companies, and then they outsource their auditing to a separate company, so there's no conflict. Perhaps we could, from a state level, get a couple of firms across the state on state contract, and then deploy those into local districts that don't have those resources and don't know that that's a possibility. They don't even know that they can reach out and consult or contract with someone else to do that work. Now, they may need to be in the district some and out of the districts, may be able to do some remotely, but just something simple as being able to run payroll they're struggling with, or running accounts payable they're struggling with. So, and then the CFOs and the internal auditors are running payroll and accounts payable because they don't have anybody else to do it, or they're brand new and haven't been fully trained yet. So, I don't think the software is the solution to at least one district's main problem near me, but I'm sure many of the others are like that as well. And I know that when we last had a SCASBO meeting, that was a concern of some of the other, even charter schools that spoke up during that meeting, that staffing is a real issue for them. So maybe we can find a way to deploy a team of accounting services like are handling our charter schools. So that's a possibility.
Yeah, a few different things. If y'all remember, I don't know if you remember or not, but the first meeting that we had, we talked about how finance staffing in school districts is an issue, and it's probably going to get worse because there's an awful lot of boomers or close to boomers that probably aren't going to be working a whole lot longer before they're gone, and that's where a lot of the experience is. The SCASBO certification helps, but I do think that we might need to look at revisiting that and put more emphasis on best practices and some standard procedures and really focusing more on the practical side. Like I know the one we do, it's fine, but it's a lot of it's fairly theoretical as opposed to really practical. So that's one place that we could specifically address that issue.
Well, interestingly enough, the SCASBO board is hearing about a developed mentor program for South Carolina school business officials tomorrow. It's been developed by one of our colleagues. It goes into a good bit of details, an 87-page document that goes into detail on how this mentor would literally be in the district and provide best practices and some guidance on timing of reporting and things, which is where our list that Amy started is really going to play into this. Mm-hmm. So then this would be almost like a 3-year program. You would have somebody in your district or available to you at all times, and then that would feed into the theoretical part of the certification program.
Right.
So it's a kind of a pathway to get to certification.
Yeah.
So it's something that we are working on.
Okay. One of the other things that you mentioned, Kendra, I will just tell you that when I look at the districts that we work with, I would say 80% of them are great. They get done what needs to get done. Not that there aren't issues, but that other 20%, here's what tends to happen, and I don't even really know where's the right place to address this issue. But I'll bet if you look at the more problematic districts and the ones that you're probably dealing with declarations, there's two things you can look at. One is the number of findings and management letter comments they have. And then number two is the number of adjustments that the auditors have to make to get things cleaned up. And I think one of the best things that could happen, and it really should not be the auditor, it needs to be either a superintendent or somebody at SDE, but somebody should be following up with the CFOs at these finance directors, whoever at these districts, probably like in the February, March, April timeframe, and saying, okay, we know we had these issues. We know we had these 30 adjustments that had to be done. What are you going to do? Let's make sure these are actually getting addressed, and we want proof that these are getting addressed and this stuff's getting done so that come next year we don't have the same issue. Because I will tell you what tends to happen, we go back into those districts the next year, and guess what? Nothing's been addressed. So that is another issue that I think would really help some of these districts that really struggle. Now, the problem you're going to run into are districts like the one Tanya was talking about. If you don't have the right people there, it really doesn't help anything. And so that is where we've got to look at whether it's outsourcing or some way to help in that area. As far as the best practices and standards, I absolutely love that idea. Matter of fact, the SCASBO presentation in the fall we did was on this. But where I think it really helps everybody is when it just makes things more efficient. And if things are more efficient, we're saving money and we're saving time. And so even with these problematic districts, it would take time to get them there. But if other people have to come in outside of their staff, it's going to make it so much easier, no matter who it is that's going in, if we've got those in place or are moving that direction. And I will just say even, and it's mostly the problematic districts again, but even with some of the other districts, I still think one of the things that we could do on the best practices is really have a good checklist, because even some of our good districts, 95% of it gets done, but that other 5%, it ends up taking enough time that if it takes another week of our time, then we're behind on the next district, and it snowballs, and that's why you end up with late audits, because all it takes is one that throws the wrench in things, and then after that, you can't catch up at that point.
Larry, you know how you all send us out prior to the audit, our checklist.
Yep.
What if,
Yep.
and it's a summary, and not all folks know what that means. What if we take that as a starting point, that checklist,
Yeah.
and elaborate that and put that into the best practices? Like Larry said, the goal is to have all that done on that checklist before they arrive. Send them the information as it comes. So if we can help define and elaborate on that checklist, I mean, I feel like most people want to do the right thing.
Right.
They just need help. They need help doing it.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So I feel like if we can, elaborate on some of those things and provide a little bit more guidance on things they may or may not know or feel comfortable with, could potentially speed things up on your end, because there's not a whole lot of you guys around,
Right.
like you said. So
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I've got to do the SCASBO class in April because Emily can't do it, and so I'm changing it, and we're going to go through that checklist as an example.
I think that district I was talking about will be in that class.
Good.
And not always on the PBC list, there are the prepared by client listing that is given to us by auditors, but we do quarterly reporting, and I have a separate checklist for that. So I'm going through that, and one is all your balance sheets balance, your prepaids are reversed, your receivables are reversed, things from the prior year are checked on, and everything is in line with your balance sheet, because all the adjustments are made, all the year-end, anything after year-end is completed. We've paid back the State Department of Education. I'll throw that one in there. There's no outstanding balance with the department. So, that's a key piece in order to get to year-end, to make sure those things are done early on and taken care of, so.
I don't have anything new
Did that
to
address,
add.
excuse me, did that address kind of what you were trying to get at, Frank, or what else do we need to talk about on your end?
From my perspective, I'm trying to get on the front end. Let's get ahead of the problem.
Right.
For example, we're a small agency, but my finance director, he tells me what our projected fund balance is 2 years out. So I know whatever decision I make today, if I want to give pay raises, if I'm going to say we're only going to have 50 positions. That's what we're going to fund. We just plan ahead, look ahead, and I don't know what the districts. I see it a lot in the state government. You got people that know how to handle transactions, but they really can't budget. You got local revenues and you have challenges with that, but still, I'm just trying to get ahead of the curve rather than reacting to it. How do we help? And I see that talent resource. That challenge, I see it in state government. Government,
it's everywhere now.
You hear about the cities around here. You just don't have the talent there to help when you do this. And I do think some type of, like I said, a team. I do think it's going to take. You got 70-some school districts. You got a lot of small ones. You need teams to help out and allocate this. So I hope I didn't step on Nancy's toes too much. So.
No, you didn't. I wasn't going to say anything. I don't know about projecting fund balance 2 years out, because we can't project revenue for a whole year, but we don't know what we're going to get. So it makes projecting fund balance 2 years out. I'm just throwing that out there. So I don't think I have anything additional to add, because everything that you guys have said, I totally agree with. The best practices, increased staffing, the boots on the ground mentoring, and just, that, I think, and I totally agree with Dr. Goodwin. I think you may see more of it with the newer CFOs, the new superintendents, and how that relationship comes together, and then trying to navigate the politics that comes with all of that. That's definitely challenging, because there are some times when some things happen that you, as a new person, don't know how to deal with. You're told to spend money here and there, and it's just makes stuff happen. And so, so I don't have anything additional to add to anything, but I totally agree with everything that has been said.
I'm curious, so the district, do you do your own revenue projections, or the county auditor or treasurer give you something? How do most districts project out?
We get projections from the county auditor, and then we wait for the State Department to give us projections of state revenue.
I do my own. I get I got my tax revenue for January yesterday, and so we'll take that and do a projection based on 2 or 3 year average, depending.
I had a state agency head a few years ago, well, more than a few now, but said, her staff couldn't tell her what their payroll would be at the end of the year. And so that was in a state agency. And so I see those challenges. She was trying to decide, do I have money to
I don't think districts have any issues with projecting expenditures. It's the revenue side.
Okay.
I don't want to.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Is it? That's what I'm trying to get. Again, I've seen it all. Okay.
No, I wasn't trying to throw anybody under the bus. I'm just saying how it all works. That's not a department. No,
because next
how
Thursday
it all works.
You need to be able to prepare to tell that.
So it seems you got a revenue projection problem. So going back to the problem, those districts, funding formula projections, state and local revenue, what's going to be there? Okay, I'm just trying to understand. There are options there.
Yeah.
One thing we've argued, Nancy, you've heard us say this, but on the funding formula, I wish we would go to ADM for the past year, so you have a fixed amount. You know what what that is rather than
Yeah.
wait and see what the,
Yeah. Yeah.
just, I mean, the charter schools don't like it because they're growing so fast, they want their larger share, but I think it just makes sense to give y'all a fixed figure at the start of the year based on whatever.
Frank, I think the other issue that makes it challenging, we've talked about how difficult staffing is, and they are already so busy that if you start talking to them about let's do some long-term planning, they're just going to kind of give you the blank stare. Because they just have a hard time thinking about adding any, as important as that is. And we actually, that's part of, when we do our presentations, that's part of our best practices. But that's just one other thing on top of everything else right now. That'd be hard for a lot of them. To be able to really do it well, it'd be difficult for a lot of them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we'll move things along, but it might be a homework situation now at this point.
Well, I think next time, I think last time, a lot of people said they really, I'm going to come sit down so I'm not standing up. Last time, I think everyone said they'd really like to spend a little more time to have these types of discussions about all of the things that are going on and all of the possible solutions. So what we have done is our last session is we turned it into 4 hours. It's from noon to 4. We will serve lunch, so that's good. So come here hungry. But then we're going to have some facilitators who will divide into small groups of 3 each, and really go through. And what we tried to do is find out here are the 6 things that the proviso discussed, and that the committee needed to focus on and provide actual recommendations for. And so this was designed just to, you just heard all of this, we just had these great discussions, so I really go home and start jotting down notes. And then we will, again, break in small groups and go one by one and have these types of discussions in small groups and come up with ideas, and then come back together and have this same type of discussion. And as we go through, have, facilitators can help us come up with some recommendations that we can put in the preliminary committee report that will create a draft. So that was it. We thought if we had extra time, we'd just go ahead and start filling these out this time, but we don't, which is great, honestly. I love it when the conversation goes organically. So, but I do encourage you to go home and kind of jot down just since it's fresh on your mind, and please bring it back with you. And but if not, don't worry, we'll have plenty of stuff to jog your memories when we come back next time. Can you remind us when the next meeting is? Yes, it's April 9th. And we will send out a recap of this meeting with all the material, link to the website with all the materials on the website, and we will send out a meeting invite for this one as well. It is going to start at noon and end at 4, unless you guys are just speedy and get everything done quickly.
So Rebecca, you mentioned an interim report. I know the proviso has been deleted, but what are the possibilities of getting it back in? Because we're not going to finish in one more meeting.
So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay.
It has been deleted, but we are, it is on our agenda to get it back on.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
So.
Yeah, we were thinking about your somebody. Maybe your somebody can get it back in there? Okay, thank you. That's your homework. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Because we want to do this right. We want this to be comprehensive, and everything we've talked about today about best practices and checklists and all that, that's just going to take some more time. And we can, the interim report can certainly be where we're headed, but great, thank you. Okay. We'll even write it for you and give it to you.